The black van idled at the service entrance longer than it should have. Sergeant Thomas Wright noticed it first. Not because anything about it screamed danger. Black vehicles came and went from Kensington Palace every day. Diplomatic plates, tinted windows, nothing unusual, except the timing. 3:30 on a Thursday afternoon, school pickup time, and the van sat facing the wrong direction. Wright had been with Royal Protection for 6 years, multiple deployments overseas before that. He'd learned to trust the small details that felt wrong. The van's engine was running. The driver kept checking his mirrors. And the vehicle registration didn't match any scheduled arrivals on today's security log. He moved closer, keeping his approach casual. Just a routine check. Nothing that would spook anyone doing legitimate business. The afternoon sun caught the rear window at an angle that made the tint less effective. For just a moment, Wright saw movement inside. Small, quick, then gone. His radio crackled. "Right, you copy." "Copy. Near service entrance. Checking a vehicle." "Need backup?" "Stand by." Wright circled toward the rear of the van. The driver's window rolled down. A man in his 40s, suit and tie, professional demeanor. "Good afternoon, officer." "Sergeant," Wright corrected. "Can I see your authorization?" "Of course." The driver reached for something, too slowly, like he was buying time. "Just here to collect some items from the palace office." Wright's eyes went to the rear window again. This time he saw it clearly. A small hand, palm pressed against the glass. 5 fingers, then 4, 3, 2. The emergency distress signal. The one every royal child was taught. The one they were told to use only if their life was in danger. His blood went cold. The hand belonged to Princess Charlotte. But before we go further, make sure you're subscribed to Crown Watch. We share these real stories from inside the palace walls every single day. Now, here's what happened next. Wright's training kicked in instantly. Don't alert the driver. Don't give him a reason to flee. Keep everything calm until help arrives. But every second that Van sat there was another second Charlotte was trapped inside. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." The driver's smile tightened. "I really don't have time for this. I have an appointment." "Then this should only take a moment." Wright positioned himself between the van and the exit gate. His hand moved to his radio. Subtle movement that wouldn't be obvious to someone inside a vehicle. "I need backup at service entrance. Priority 1. Possible royal protection issue." The driver's expression changed. The friendly mask dropped. "Look, I don't know what you think you saw, but I suggest you step aside." "Not going to happen." Wright's voice stayed level, professional, but his eyes never left that rear window. Charlotte's hand was still there, still signaling, still desperate. The radio crackled again. "Backup en route. 2 minutes." 2 minutes. 120 seconds. A lifetime when a child was in danger. Wright made his decision. He moved around the front of the van, directly into the driver's line of sight. If the man tried to accelerate, he'd have to go through Wright first. "Sir, I'm ordering you to turn off the engine and exit the vehicle immediately. You're making a serious mistake. Do you have any idea who—" "I saw the signal." Wright cut him off. His voice was quieter now, harder. "The emergency signal, from the rear window. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Turn off the engine." The driver's hand moved toward the gear shift. Wright didn't hesitate. He pulled his radio back up. "We have a code black. Repeat, code black. Service entrance. Royal child potentially in danger. Seal all exits now." Alarms began to sound throughout the complex. The palace's emergency protocols activating. Within seconds, every gate would lock down. Every guard would be mobilized, and this van wasn't going anywhere. The driver knew it too. His jaw clenched. "You're going to regret this." "Probably." Wright circled back toward the rear of the van. "But I'll regret it more if I'm wrong, and I do nothing. He reached the rear window. Up close, he could see her now. Princess Charlotte, still in her school uniform, St. Thomas's Battersea crest on the blazer. Her face was pale, scared, but she was trying to hold it together, trying to be brave. Their eyes met through the tinted glass. She nodded once. Small movement, confirming what he already knew. She needed help. She needed it now. Charlotte, he said quietly, knowing she probably couldn't hear him through the glass and engine noise. I'm getting you out. The driver's door opened. Wright spun, one hand going to the baton on his belt. But the man wasn't running. He was standing there, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapidly, in a language Wright didn't recognize. Not good. If he was calling someone, they had minutes before this situation got more complicated. Backup arrived. 2 guards sprinting from the main building. Staff Sergeant Chen and Sergeant Vale. Both experienced. Both understanding immediately from the look on Wright's face that this wasn't a drill. Situation? Chen asked, slightly out of breath. Princess Charlotte, rear of the vehicle, gave the emergency signal. Driver won't cooperate. I need you to detain him while I get her out. Vale moved toward the driver without hesitation. The man tried to protest, but Vale wasn't listening. Sir, you need to come with me. Now. Wright turned back to the van's rear door. Locked from the inside. He pulled on the handle. Nothing. The windows were too tinted to see the interior mechanism. He looked back at Charlotte through the rear window. She was pointing now, gesturing toward something he couldn't see, mouthing words he couldn't quite make out. He leaned closer, trying to read her lips. No handle. Wright's stomach dropped. The rear, passenger area had no interior door handles. Charlotte was locked in. Deliberately. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. Someone had trapped her in that van. Chen, I need something to break this window. Right now. Chen ran back toward the guardhouse. 30 seconds, that felt like an hour. Wright stayed at the window, maintaining eye contact with Charlotte, letting her know he wasn't leaving. That help was coming. She looked so small, so vulnerable. But she wasn't crying. She wasn't panicking. She was doing exactly what she'd been taught. Stay calm. Wait for help. Trust the people protecting you. Wright thought about his own daughter, 7 years old, same age as Charlotte. If someone had trapped her in a vehicle, he'd want someone to break through steel to get her out. Chen returned with an emergency hammer, the kind designed to shatter car windows. Wright took it, positioned himself, and looked one more time at Charlotte. Cover your face. She understood. She ducked down, arms over her head, tucking herself into the smallest possible space in the corner of the van. Wright swung. The window exploded inward, safety glass fragmenting into thousands of small pieces. The sound was deafening, alarms, shouting, the crash of glass. And through it all, Wright reached through the broken window, fumbling for the door lock. Found it, clicked it open, pulled the door wide. Charlotte looked up at him. Small pieces of safety glass caught in her blonde hair. Her school uniform dusty from crouching on the van floor. But physically unharmed. Thank God. It's okay, Wright said softly. You're safe now. She didn't move immediately. Just sat there, breathing hard, the reality of being rescued catching up with her. Then slowly, carefully, she crawled toward the open door. Wright lifted her out. She was lighter than he expected, trembling slightly despite her composure. He set her down on solid ground, away from the broken glass, and knelt so they were at eye level. Are you hurt anywhere? Charlotte shook her head. No words yet, just the small shake of her head. Can you tell me what happened? She glanced toward the driver. Vale had him against the guardhouse wall now, hands secured. The man was still talking on his phone, voice angry and rapid. Charlotte's face changed when she looked at him. Fear, yes, but something else. Recognition. He said he was taking me to Mummy, she whispered. Her voice was so quiet, Wright had to lean in to hear it. He had identification, palace credentials. He knew the pickup code word. Wright felt his jaw tighten. This wasn't random. This was planned, detailed. Someone had given this man everything he needed to convince Charlotte to get in that van. Where was he actually taking you? I don't know. Charlotte's voice cracked slightly. We drove past the turn for Clarence House. I asked him where we were going. He told me to be quiet. That's when I realized something was wrong. Did he hurt you? No, but he locked the doors. And when I tried to open them, he said if I made a fuss, it would be worse for Mummy and Daddy. She looked up at Wright, her eyes wet now, but still not crying. I remembered the signal, the emergency one. I kept doing it every time we stopped, hoping someone would see. You did exactly right. Wright put a hand on her shoulder, gentle, reassuring. You were so brave, Charlotte. She finally broke. Not sobbing, just quiet tears sliding down her cheeks while she tried to keep her voice steady. I was scared. I didn't know if anyone would understand. I understood. More vehicles were arriving now. Palace security, Metropolitan Police. This was no longer just a royal protection matter. This was attempted kidnapping of a child in direct line to the throne. The kind of incident that would trigger responses all the way up to the Home Office. Wright didn't know it yet, but breaking that window had just stopped something much bigger than a single abduction attempt. Something that had been planned for months. Something that would have changed everything. Not just for Charlotte, for the entire royal family. Inspector Sarah Chen from the Metropolitan Police arrived within minutes. Experienced. Sharp. She took one look at the scene and immediately understood the severity. Sergeant Wright, that's me. I need you to walk me through exactly what happened, start to finish. Wright did. Every detail. The timing, the wrong direction, the distress signal, the driver's behavior, Charlotte's statement about the pickup code word. Chen listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious with each detail. The driver, she asked. Still in custody. Vale has him. Good. Keep him isolated. No phone calls, no communication with anyone until we know what we're dealing with. Chen turned to one of her team. I want this van processed completely. Interior, exterior, every document, every electronic device. And I want to know who this man is and who sent him. She crouched down to Charlotte's level, her voice softening. Your Royal Highness, I'm Inspector Chen. I need to ask you some questions. But first, would you like us to call your parents? Charlotte nodded quickly. Please. Of course. Chen gestured to another officer. Get the Prince and Princess of Wales on the phone immediately. Tell them their daughter is safe, but there's been an incident. Wright stayed with Charlotte while Chen made calls and coordinated the response. Other guards had formed a protective perimeter. The van was being photographed from every angle. The driver had gone silent now, staring straight ahead, refusing to answer questions. Sergeant Wright. Charlotte's small voice broke through the controlled chaos around them. Yes? Thank you for believing me, for understanding the signal. Always. Wright looked down at her. This small girl who'd kept her composure through something terrifying. Who'd remembered her training under pressure. Who'd trusted that someone would see her desperate plea for help. That's what the signal is for. Within 15 minutes, Prince William's vehicle came through the main gates at a speed that probably violated several traffic laws. He was out of the car before it fully stopped, Kate right behind him. Their faces showed everything they'd been feeling during that 15-minute drive. Terror, relief, fury. Charlotte ran to them, finally allowing herself to be just a scared child instead of a brave princess. Kate scooped her up, holding her tight, checking her over with a mother's practiced eye for any sign of injury. William's hand rested on Charlotte's back, his own hands shaking slightly. She's okay, Wright said quietly. giving them space but staying close enough to provide answers. Physically unharmed, shaken up, but she handled it incredibly well. William looked at Wright over Charlotte's head. His eyes were red. What happened? Attempted abduction. Subject posed as authorized transport. Had credentials and the pickup code word. Charlotte realized something was wrong when he deviated from the route. She gave the emergency distress signal. I saw it and initiated the response. You broke the window? It wasn't a question. Yes, sir. The interior door handles had been disabled. She was trapped. Kate pulled back slightly from Charlotte, looking at Wright. You saw the signal? From outside the van? Yes, ma'am. She was positioned at the rear window. When I approached, she gave it clearly. I called for backup and secured the vehicle. William set his jaw. That particular expression Wright recognized from news footage. The prince preparing to go to war over something. And the man who tried to take her? In custody. Metropolitan Police are processing him now. Inspector Chen is handling the investigation. As if on cue, Chen approached. She'd been on her phone continuously since arriving, coordinating with multiple agencies. Now she addressed William and Kate directly, her voice professional, but not without compassion. Your Royal Highnesses, we're treating this as a serious threat to royal security. The suspect had detailed information that should not have been accessible to outsiders. We're investigating how he obtained it. I want to know everything. William's voice was quiet but harder than steel. Every detail, every person involved, every security failure that let this happen. You will have a full briefing, but right now, I'd recommend getting Princess Charlotte somewhere secure and comfortable. We'll need a formal statement from her, but that can wait until she's ready. Kate nodded. She looked at Wright. Sergeant, would you accompany us? Charlotte seems comfortable with you, and I think it would help her to have you there. It wasn't really a request from the future queen, but it was asked gently. Wright nodded. Of course, ma'am. They moved toward William's vehicle. Charlotte was still in Kate's arms, but she looked back at Wright over her mother's shoulder, making sure he was following, needing that constant reassurance that the person who saved her was still there. The drive to Kensington Palace was short, but tense. Kate sat in the back with Charlotte, holding her close. William drove with the kind of controlled precision that came from restraining fury. Wright sat in the front passenger seat, aware that his presence was as much for Charlotte's comfort as anything else. The signal, Charlotte said suddenly. Her voice muffled against Kate's shoulder, but clear enough. Mummy, I used the signal you taught me. I know, darling, you did exactly right. Kate's voice was tight with emotion. You remembered, and you stayed brave, and you trusted that someone would help. Sergeant Wright saw it. He understood. Kate looked up at Wright. Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been paying attention. Wright didn't respond. It didn't need to. They all knew what could have happened. What the driver's true intentions were remained unknown, but kidnapping a royal child never ended well. The possibilities ranged from ransom demands to political statements to something much darker. We're approaching the moment that shocked the entire palace staff when they learned what investigators discovered next. If you haven't subscribed to Crown Watch yet, do it now. We share these stories that never make the official news. Here's what the police found. Back at the service entrance, Inspector Chen's team was methodically processing the van. What they found in the first 30 minutes was concerning. What they found over the next 2 hours was terrifying. The van's interior had been modified. The rear passenger area was completely separated from the front, soundproofed. The door handles removed, the windows impossible to open from inside. This wasn't a vehicle hastily adapted for kidnapping. This was a professionally prepared transport designed to hold someone against their will. In the front console, police found detailed schedules. Charlotte's school pickup times, guard rotation schedules, precise timing windows, maps with routes highlighted. alternate escape paths marked. This had been planned for weeks, maybe months, but it was the encrypted phone they found hidden under the driver's seat that changed everything. The kind of phone that required serious resources to crack. The kind used by people who knew what they were doing. By the time the encryption was broken 3 hours later, the list of contacts and messages inside would reveal a network that extended far beyond one man with a van. At Kensington Palace, a different kind of investigation was beginning. William had called an emergency meeting of the Royal Protection Detail. Every guard, every security officer, everyone with access to the schedules and procedures that had been compromised. Wright stood at the back of the room as Prince William addressed the assembled staff. His voice was controlled, measured, absolutely furious. Someone leaked information to the man who tried to take my daughter. Detailed information. Protected information. I want to know who. I want to know why. And I want to know how this happened under protocols that are supposed to prevent exactly this scenario. Captain Richard Wells, head of Royal Protection, stepped forward. Sir, we're conducting a full internal review. Every person with access to those schedules will be questioned. Every security procedure will be examined. I give you my word, we will find the breach. Your word. William's tone made it clear what he thought of that right now. My daughter was locked in a van, trapped, terrified, because someone's word wasn't good enough to keep her safe. The room stayed silent. Nobody wanted to defend a system that had just failed so catastrophically. Wright felt the tension, the anger, the shame of every professional in the room, who knew that one of their own had somehow betrayed the most fundamental duty they had. William's eyes found Wright. Sergeant Wright, step forward. Wright moved through the assembled guards, wondering if he was about to be blamed for somehow allowing this to happen, if breaking that window had actually violated some protocol he should have followed, if his split-second decision was about to end his career. Sir, William looked at him for a long moment. You saw the signal. Yes, sir. From how far away? Approximately 20 meters, through tinted glass. And you acted immediately? Yes, sir. Once I confirmed the signal, I initiated code black protocols and secured the vehicle. William nodded slowly. Captain Wells, I want Sergeant Wright assigned directly to Charlotte's protection detail. Full time, no rotation. Wells looked startled. Sir, that's highly irregular. We typically rotate guards to prevent. I don't care about typical. William cut him off. My daughter trusts him. She feels safe with him. And he proved today that he pays attention when it matters. Those three things are more important to me right now than any rotation protocol. Yes, sir. William turned back to Wright. You'll report directly to me on any concerns regarding Charlotte's security. Any suspicions, any anomalies, anything that feels even slightly wrong, you come to me. Is that clear? Crystal clear, sir. Good, because what happened today doesn't happen again. Not on my watch, and apparently not on yours either. It was as close to a thank you as Wright was likely to get from a prince who was currently processing his daughter's near abduction. But it was more than enough. The assignment was the real message, the trust placed in him, the recognition that he'd made the right choice under pressure. The meeting continued for another hour. Wells outlined new security measures, changing code words daily instead of weekly, implementing biometric verification for all drivers, installing panic buttons in every vehicle used to transport royal children, photography of every person who came near the school grounds. None of it addressed the core problem. Someone on the inside had betrayed that trust. Someone with access had sold information to people who wanted to harm a child. Until that person was found, every measure was just a temporary patch on a fundamental breach. Inspector Chen arrived as the meeting was wrapping up. She looked tired but grimly satisfied. Your Royal Highness, we've identified the driver. His name is Marcus Doyle, former security contractor. He has connections to 3 different criminal organizations, all of which have expressed interest in targeting high-value individuals. Who hired him? William asked immediately. We're still tracking that. The phone we recovered has several encrypted contacts. We're working with international partners to identify them. But the planning level suggests professional coordination. This wasn't random crime. This was contracted. Meaning someone paid to have my daughter taken? Yes, sir. The room's temperature seemed to drop. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a security breach. This was a deliberate, funded operation targeting the royal family's children. The kind of threat that required resources, planning, and insider information. Wright thought about Charlotte, about how close she'd come to disappearing, about what might have happened if he'd dismissed that van as routine, if he'd been looking at his phone instead of watching his surroundings, if he'd convinced himself that the timing wasn't really that unusual. He hadn't known it when he approached that van, but those 30 seconds of decision-making had mattered more than anything else he'd done in 6 years of service, maybe more than anything he'd ever do. Kate entered the room quietly. She'd been with Charlotte, helping her process. What had happened in whatever way a mother could. Now she looked at Wells, at Chen, at William. Charlotte's asking for Sergeant Wright. She wants to make sure he's not in trouble for breaking the window. Wright felt something in his chest tighten. Even after everything, Charlotte was worried about whether he'd face consequences for saving her. Tell her he's not in trouble, William said. Tell her he did exactly what he was supposed to do. Kate smiled slightly. I did, but she'd like to hear it from him, if that's acceptable. William nodded to Wright. Go. Wright followed Kate through the palace hallways. The evening sun was slanting through tall windows. Staff members moved quietly, going about their duties while pretending not to know about the crisis that had just unfolded. But the tension was palpable. Everyone knew something had happened. The lockdown, the police presence, the emergency meetings. Charlotte was in a private sitting room with Princess Anne. The Princess Royal had arrived 20 minutes earlier, and from the look on her face, someone had already received a blistering assessment of the security failures. Anne didn't suffer incompetence, especially where children were concerned. Sergeant Wright, Anne said as he entered. Her tone was formal, but not unfriendly. Charlotte has been asking about you. Charlotte sat on a sofa, changed out of her school uniform into comfortable clothes. She looked smaller than she had earlier, more like the child she actually was instead of the composed princess, who'd held herself together through terror. Hi, she said quietly. Hi. Wright sat in the chair across from her, keeping his posture relaxed. Non-threatening, just a conversation between two people who'd shared an intense experience. Your mum said you were worried I got in trouble. Did you? No. Your father just assigned me to your protection detail. Full time. Charlotte's eyes widened slightly. Really? Really? Turns out breaking windows to rescue princesses is acceptable protocol. She almost smiled at that. Almost. I was scared you'd be punished. For the broken glass. For not waiting for permission. Sometimes waiting for permission means waiting too long. Wright leaned forward slightly. You did everything right today, Charlotte. You recognized danger. You stayed calm. You used the signal. You trusted that help would come. That's exactly what you were supposed to do. I thought maybe no one would see. The glass was so dark. I saw, and even if I hadn't, you would have kept signaling until someone did. You didn't give up. I wanted to. Her voice got quieter. When he locked the doors, when he wouldn't tell me where we were going, I wanted to cry and scream and bang on the windows. But you didn't? No, because Mummy always says that when you're scared, you have to be smart. Screaming doesn't help. Thinking helps. Kate, standing near the doorway, wiped at her eyes. Anne's expression softened slightly. Wright nodded. Your mum is right. And you are smart. Incredibly smart. Will you really be my guard now? All the time? That's the plan. You're stuck with me. For the first time since the incident, Charlotte's face showed real relief, the kind that comes from knowing that the person who saved you once will be there to do it again if needed. Good, I like you. You pay attention. It was possibly the highest compliment Wright had ever received. The investigation into Marcus Doyle's network took 3 weeks. In that time, Wright became Charlotte's constant shadow. School pick-up and drop-off, public events, private time at the palace. He learned her schedule, her habits, her tells when she was uncomfortable or scared. She adjusted to his presence quickly. Sometimes she'd tell him about her day. Sometimes she'd ask questions about his job. Sometimes she'd just appreciate the quiet reassurance of having someone nearby who'd proven they'd act when it mattered. The breakthrough in the investigation came from an unlikely source. The encrypted phone yielded a contact list, and one of those contacts belonged to a low-level palace administrative assistant. Someone with access to scheduling systems. Someone in significant debt. Someone who'd been approached with an offer of money in exchange for information. The assistant confessed within an hour of being questioned. The money had been too tempting. The risk had seemed low. Nobody was supposed to get hurt. Just information. Just schedules. Just details that seemed harmless on their own. But information is never harmless when it's given to the wrong people. Those schedules had enabled Doyle to know exactly when Charlotte would be vulnerable. Those details had given him the credibility to convince her to get in his van. That harmless information had nearly destroyed a family. The assistant was arrested, charged with conspiracy and endangering a child. The quiet justice system that handles threats to royalty moved with unusual speed. By the end of the month, the assistant was facing 10 years in prison. Doyle himself revealed little. Professional kidnapper, paid well for this particular job. Didn't know who the ultimate client was. Didn't care. The money was good. The target was high profile. That was enough for him. But the encrypted phone contacts led to other contacts, a web of criminal networks that specialized in high-value abductions. And at the center of that web, investigators found something that made even hardened detectives pause. This hadn't been about ransom. This had been about leverage, about having a bargaining chip against the royal family, about holding something so precious that any demand would be met. It was political, strategic, cold. Inspector Chen presented the findings to William and Kate in a private briefing. Wright was there as Charlotte's primary protection officer. What he heard made him understand just how close things had come to catastrophe. The network had multiple targets, Chen explained. Princess Charlotte was one of 3 royal children on their list. They were waiting for the right moment, the right vulnerability. When the opportunity presented itself with the compromised scheduling information, they moved quickly. Do we know who the ultimate client was? William asked. His voice was carefully controlled. We have theories. The phone records suggest connections to organizations with political grievances against the UK. But we may never have definitive proof. These networks are designed to obscure the money trail. So someone out there wanted to take my daughter, and we might never know who. Chen's silence was answer enough. Kate looked at Wright. If Sergeant Wright hadn't been paying attention... We don't know what would have happened, Chen said gently, but the van was headed toward a private airfield. Doyle had a window of approximately 40 minutes before the abduction would have been discovered. Once they reached that airfield, recovering Princess Charlotte would have become significantly more complicated. 40 minutes. The time it takes to drive across London in moderate traffic. The difference between a child safe at home and a child lost to a network that specialized in making people disappear. Wright thought about that moment when he'd first seen the van, when he'd dismissed it as probably routine, when he'd almost walked past. The tiny decision to check one more time, to circle around for a better look, to trust his instincts about the timing being wrong, inches and seconds. That's what security came down to, the inches between walking past and looking closer, the seconds between dismissing something and investigating it, the split-second choice between following protocol and doing what's right. Stay with us for the final moments of this story. You won't want to miss what happened next. Now here's how this changed everything. 3 months after the incident, Wright was summoned to a private meeting with Princess Anne. Not William or Kate. Anne, the one royal who'd served in the military herself, who understood what it meant to make decisions under pressure, who didn't waste time on ceremony when substance mattered more. "Sergeant Wright," she said as he entered her office at St. James's Palace. "Sit." He sat. Anne studied him for a moment. "You know the palace usually doesn't make a fuss about guards doing their jobs well. It's expected. It's what you're paid for." "Yes, ma'am." "But what happened with Charlotte wasn't just doing your job well. It was seeing something everyone else missed. Acting when hesitation would have been easier. Breaking protocol because the situation demanded it." She paused. "That kind of judgment is rare. The kind of judgment that can't be taught." Wright wasn't sure if this was praise or heading somewhere else entirely. With Anne, you never quite knew. "The King is awarding you the Royal Victorian Order, Silver Grade. It will be presented at a private ceremony next month. No press, no publicity, but it will be on your record. And it will mean that every time someone reviews your file, they'll know you're someone who acts when children are in danger." "Thank you, ma'am. But honestly, I was just—" "Don't," Anne cut him off. "Don't diminish what you did. Charlotte trusts you. Her parents trust you. And that trust was earned in about 30 seconds of perfect judgment under pressure. Accept the recognition. You've earned it." "Yes, ma'am. Now, more importantly, how is Charlotte doing?" Wright considered the question carefully. "She's resilient, still processes things sometimes, occasionally asks questions about what might have happened, but she's sleeping well, eating normally, engaging with school and activities. She's healing." "And you?" This kind of incident takes a toll on protection officers too. It was a surprisingly personal question from someone known for professional distance. Wright appreciated it. "I'm managing, did some counseling sessions through the service, helped to talk through the what-ifs, the scenarios where I make different choices, the ones where you don't see the signal." "Yes, ma'am," Anne nodded. "Those scenarios are necessary. They keep you sharp. But don't let them consume you. You made the right choice with the information you had in the moment you had it. That's all any of us can do." "I'll remember that. See that you do. Charlotte needs you focused on keeping her safe now, not dwelling on what might have gone wrong then." The ceremony, a month later, was small. Just immediate family and senior palace officials. The king himself placed the medal around Wright's neck and shook his hand with genuine warmth. "Thank you for protecting our granddaughter," he said simply. No speeches, no formality, just a grandfather's gratitude to the man who'd saved his granddaughter's life. Charlotte was there too. Kate had asked if she wanted to attend, and she'd said yes immediately. She stood between her parents, wearing a formal dress, watching as Wright received recognition for the action that had changed both their lives. Afterward, as the small group shared tea and quiet conversation, Charlotte approached Wright. "Sergeant Wright?" "Yes? Can I ask you something?" "Of course." She looked up at him, serious expression on her young face. "Do you think about that day? About the van?" "Sometimes." "Me too. Mostly I think about how scared I was, but also how I knew you would help, even before you broke the window, when you looked at me through the glass. I knew." "How did you know?" "Because you saw me, really saw me, not just looked at where I was, but saw that I needed help." She paused, choosing her words carefully. That's why I don't feel scared now. Because I know you're still seeing, still paying attention. Wright felt the weight of that trust, the responsibility of being the person a child counted on, to notice when things were wrong, to act when action was needed, to be the barrier between her and the dangers that still existed in the world. I'll always pay attention, he promised. That's my job. But it's also something more than that now. It's personal. Charlotte smiled. Small, but genuine. Good, because you're my favorite guard. I'm honored. Don't let it go to your head. She grinned, suddenly looking like the child she actually was instead of the poised princess she had to be in public. George says you're probably not even in the top 10, but he's wrong. You're number 1. Kate, overhearing this exchange, hid a smile behind her teacup. William caught Wright's eye and nodded once, a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had formed between guard and princess, the kind of trust that couldn't be assigned or mandated, only earned. The months that followed were quieter. Security protocols remained heightened, but gradually relaxed to something sustainable. The network that had targeted Charlotte was dismantled piece by piece through international cooperation. Other children on their list were quietly moved to enhanced protection. Wright continued his assignment on Charlotte's detail. He learned her favorite subjects in school, her tendency to try to sneak extra biscuits at tea time, her habit of reading under the covers past bedtime, her kindness toward palace staff, her occasional stubbornness that reminded him so much of her mother. He also learned the weight of being someone's constant protector, the hypervigilance that never quite turned off, the way he scanned every crowd, every vehicle, every person who came too close, the nightmares where he didn't see the signal in time, where the van drove away, where he failed, but those nightmares were balanced by the reality. Charlotte, safe and thriving, growing more confident, knowing that she'd survived something terrifying and come through it stronger, knowing that when she needed help, help had come. One afternoon, about 6 months after the incident, Wright was walking Charlotte back from a private music lesson within the palace. She was chattering about the piano piece she was learning, something complicated by Mozart that she was determined to master. Suddenly, she stopped talking, just stopped mid-sentence and stood still. Wright's hand moved immediately to his radio, alert, scanning, looking for whatever had triggered her reaction. Charlotte, she pointed, down the corridor, at a man in a maintenance uniform walking away from them. He hadn't done anything suspicious, hadn't even looked in their direction. Do you recognize him? Wright asked quietly. No, but he's walking wrong. Wright studied the man more carefully. She was right. He was walking wrong, too deliberately casual. The posture of someone trying to look like they belonged while not being entirely certain of where they were going. Wright spoke into his radio. Security, this is Wright. I have a maintenance worker, grey uniform, corridor E3, heading toward the East Wing. Need verification on his authorization. The response came back 30 seconds later. No scheduled maintenance for that area today. We're sending a team. The man must have sensed something. He glanced back, saw Wright watching him, and ran. Wright pushed Charlotte behind him. Stay here. Don't move. Security converged from 3 directions. The man was caught before he made it to any exit. Turned out to be a reporter who'd somehow obtained a maintenance uniform and snuck into the palace hoping to get unauthorized photographs or information. Not dangerous, just stupid. But it could have been dangerous, and Charlotte had noticed. Later, after the situation was resolved and they were continuing their walk, Wright looked down at her. How did you know something was wrong with him? I don't know. He just felt wrong, like the van felt wrong. She thought about it. I guess I'm better at paying attention now too. Wright smiled. I guess you are. It was a strange gift to come from trauma. The heightened awareness, the ability to sense when something was off. Charlotte had learned to trust her instincts, to speak up when things felt wrong, to understand that her safety sometimes depended on noticing the details others missed. Not a gift any child should need, but one that might save her life again someday. If this story showed you something about royal guards you didn't know, make sure you're subscribed to Crown Watch. We share these untold stories from inside the palace every single day. Drop a comment and tell us, would you have broken that window? Would you have trusted your instincts like Sergeant Wright did? We'll see you in the next one. The story of Sergeant Thomas Wright and Princess Charlotte became something of a quiet legend within Royal Protection Services. Not publicized, not celebrated publicly, but known. The guard who saw what others missed, who acted when hesitation would have been easier, who understood that sometimes the rules matter less than doing what's right. Wright received several quiet offers to transfer to other details, higher profile assignments, more prestigious positions. He turned them all down. His assignment was Charlotte. That's where he needed to be, because true duty isn't about following orders blindly. It's about knowing when rules matter less than protecting the person standing in front of you. It's about paying attention when others look away. It's about 30 seconds of perfect judgment that changes everything. Wright had those 30 seconds. He used them well. And a small girl who mouthed, "Help me," through a van window went home to her family instead of disappearing into a network designed to make people vanish. That's the story they don't tell you about royal guards. The inches and seconds that separate tragedy from safety. The decisions made in moments too brief to think through. The trust placed in people whose judgment has to be perfect, because anything less means failure. Wright went home that night, 6 months after the incident, kissed his own daughter goodnight, and understood something he hadn't before. Every parent, royal or not, sends their children out into a world that isn't always safe. And sometimes, if they're incredibly lucky, there's someone watching, someone paying attention, someone who'll break through steel and glass to get them home. He'd been that someone for Charlotte, and he'd be that someone every single day until she was old enough to no longer need a guard standing between her and danger. That was his duty, his honor, his choice. And he'd make the same choice again without hesitation, every single time.